Against? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now moving to item 19, Climate Change Programme Consultation on Draft Targets. Are there any questions on this matter? Okay, no questions. Was there any comment from staff?
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, we're happy to make either comments or get questions straight away.
Question here from Phil. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for preparing the submission and the work that's been done on this. I just wanted to clarify. I'm not sure which page it is. Page 2 of the draft submission. There's reference to planting more trees as a way of, reducing the emissions. I'm just wondering if my understanding is that it's particularly native trees that actually will absorb the emissions, and if we should add native trees as against indigenous pine trees. Okay.
Yeah, there are differences between native trees and exotic trees. Obviously our preference would be for natives. They are a little slower growing, but over the longer term they do have benefits, and obviously for biodiversity benefits in New Zealand. We don't have any specific examples in this document. It's really around the types of targets, but we can definitely look at something around the specific types of trees in future.
It just seems to me that in developing our biodiversity policy and strategy too, that would link in with if we make the submission this way.
Sure.
Could I just help with that? There is a report on carbon forestry finally coming to the Innovation and Sustainability Committee in July, and you can get carbon credits from both natives and exotics. Most of our plantings are natives, and that's what we would be looking at.
Any further questions? Okay, now there's a suggestion that we should add a second paragraph that determines when the consultation feedback comes in. Obviously, people will want to be heard. We need to set up a mechanism for hearings.
You want to pass it as a resolution?
So it's not in the resolution.
Okay, it is in the report.
So it would be that the committee hear the...
Is that the committee hear the resolutions, and in fact the committee dates are already set for doing so.
Right, okay, so we're just formalising something that's already in the report and that's already in train then by the sounds of it.
Can I introduce it then?
So we've got consultation starting on next Wednesday, which will run through till the 14th of August.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Vicky, yeah, given that this came from your committee, I should have asked you to introduce this, so if you'd like to do that.
So this is a reasonably important document, and I just want to thank all of the staff who've done the work on bringing this together, because it is seriously important. This is how the city gets to net carbon neutrality, and when we get there, and whether we include methane gases in that target of net carbon neutrality, which goes beyond what the government is proposing. So you'll be aware of the government's proposal because our submission is on it later in the agenda. We think that there may be interest in bringing the target forward from 2050 to an earlier date. So we're asking people what they think about that. But given that on our carbon emission profile, only 10% of our emissions come from methane, as opposed to about 50% in the government targets. We're thinking that a possibility will be to include methane in that net carbon neutrality. So it would be real net carbon neutrality. And people had the chance to tell us what they think about that. So they can tell us about the target, timeline, methane. We have a council resolution in relation to getting this target sorted before September of this year. And so this timeline, which allows for consultation for a series of days in which people can come and speak directly to the committee, which will act as the hearings panel, but get back to council before September, so that we get this done with the speed with which it deserves to be done, like fast. And then maybe having a halfway point in terms of reaching those targets. And then I think for the next council, what you will next need to do is to actually set yearly targets as well. So you have your overall target and the date, a halfway point, and then your annual targets that you need to meet, so that it's absolutely set out what needs to happen by way of reduction in climate emission, carbon emissions, and how we do our part in mitigating climate change. So I think there will be a lot of interest in this. Certainly we found in the other climate change consultation that there was a lot of interest in taking action quickly, but we won't prejudge that decision. We'll just wait and see what people say, and then come back to council in September with the recommendations, having heard all the submissions.
Thank you. So, Vicky, I'm guessing you're happy to move this? And do I have a seconder? Sarah. Thank you. Nobody's got further questions? Pauline, you've got a question.
Thank you. Just on the methane emissions, so our landfills in Christchurch, we capture those, don't we?
And most of them, I believe, there's some historic landfills that we need to investigate a little more.
Are there?
But we are looking into those, I believe. That's my understanding, but I'm not 100% sure on that. We can definitely get back to you on that.
That would be very good, actually.
Sure.
Thank
Okay.
you. So we can add that to our... Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anne.
Question, I may have missed this in here, but given the huge motivation in our young people to address these issues, and the fact that the decisions we make now will impact them mostly, are there any specific things that you're going to do to engage young people in this?
There are a couple of things that we are looking to do.
Yep.
We have, we'll obviously be using our networks that we have with the youth community, and we've also got quite strong within the project team. There's some good connections into youth community there as well. And there's also another option for an amazing race kind of thing around the same time as this consultation was happening, and I'm just trying to line things up so people will have the opportunity to have their say on the day on this.
Thank you. Jimmy.
I would like to follow the end questions, because these cities diversified, city and community. But regarding consultation, I'm not sure, particularly regarding the population. So this time, staff whether like to take a positive way, engage with those kind of multi-ethnic or multicultural group, have population, to let them know this is very serious, the kind of issue, big impact to our city. To set up the targets very, very crucial and important, So I'm not sure what's your plan, to
We will be
make that
doing
happen.
our usual comprehensive consultation engagement on this one. So we will be targeting youth, we'll be targeting multicultural communities,
Yes.
we'll be targeting business, we'll be going out to our residents associations. We'll be making it very people very aware in Christchurch that this consultation is
Okay.
happening over the next 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Yanni.
Yeah, I mean, I do have concerns about the time frame, particularly because we've got the whole cost share refresh going on at the same time, and we know previously groups have said to us that they need minimum 6 weeks to actually receive the information, take it to a meeting, get it ratified. So I just wondered whether there'd been thought given to having a longer time frame, and also that there's only one question on here, and I just wondered if it was a little bit leading.
3 questions
Oh,
and any other comments. So we've
right,
got, should
I mean,
we
there's-
align, or should we take a more ambitious approach? And there'll be section under there to write, sorry to interrupt, but there'll be a section under there to write comments. If you think we should take more ambitious approach, a
Sorry, I'm
double
just
barrel question there.
looking at 174, but am I missing, is there another?
I think that was the early draft report that went to committee.
the early
There's,
Oh, I'm sorry.
if you look on page 180, I believe, is
okay.
the slightly amended version.
So I'm just mindful of these things that sometimes people think that we've got a predetermined outcome, and so they get trapped into maybe wanting to to indicate concern, but it gets either registered as support or, you know, gets translated different. So you've got some more questions, but have they been reviewed sort of from someone that does, you know, proper surveys just to ensure that?
Not like me.
No, I mean, well, just, I don't know, yeah. I just mean in terms of like, just because this will be controversial and it will be contentious, and I think the best thing for us is to ensure that we've got a robust set of questions that can give us good feedback. So, yeah.
And in response to your questions, Councillor Johansson, so there was quite a lot of discussion on these questions to make sure that we had made that we were giving people the option to have their say on the points, that we weren't leading them to any decision there, that we were open to feedback, that it isn't a tick box exercise. There's no, do you support this, do you support that? It's going to be a free text one, so we'll be analysing comments rather than just sort of like a quantitative one. If you think it is important, I can get someone within the organisation who does the, our Kath Jamison to review again. But I have a reasonable confidence that the questions that we've got there will give us the outcome that you're looking for.
Right.
And also, people tend to write what they want to write, whatever the question is. People will. This is, like you're saying, not a contentious. Well, I guess a little bit of a contentious issue, and so people do strongly give their views, like through the survey and things like that. So it's
in response to your question,
I just think, like, when you have something like, should we align with the proposed national net zero greenhouse gas emission targets by 2050? There's a separate approach to methane gas, or should we take a more ambitious approach? Some people actually might think that what the government's doing is quite ambitious. Mm-hmm. So it puts people in a kind of difficult situation. So maybe that just needs to be separated out, because it's quite hard when people have to make an or decision. But anyway, I'll just leave it with you. So the only other thing that I thought was interesting is there's no recognition of the work that, and unless I've missed it, was that we actually did a climate smart strategy, and there's no reference to that and the work that we've done previously, which seems to be a gap. And I just wondered why that's not mentioned, and sort of what the status of that is.
Could I just respond to your question on timing too? Look, I'm very sorry, but if we are going to make the last council meeting, we are going to, we can be out for 4 weeks, but we need to hit some timelines there, and we have worked it back, and the best we can do is 4 weeks consultation. So I hope to cover my bases there by making sure that people are very aware of this consultation. We've had several newsline stories already signalling that it's coming, another one today, and we'll be making sure that people are aware, so they've got, at least they're lined up to put in a submission. In terms of context and content, this is just the first step of a wider program of engagement which will be happening on the climate change strategy. So I see this as a first step. We can reference what's happened previously. This will be an electronic document. It won't be printed, though there will be provision to print it out at service centres and libraries. And it will be sitting on a page that will link to a whole lot of other documents and work that we're doing here in Council. So we have the wider context.
Strategy?
This is for the whole city.
We will
There'll be a
scope
link
it,
there.
yeah.
But,
we'll make it clear this is part of a wider review
wider
of that
piece of
climate
work.
smart strategy. The emissions are sort of the first step in reviewing that document, and we'll make that clear.
It's just really not clear. Like, for those of us who were involved at the time and heard submissions and put things in place, it's like that's just been completely forgotten about.
We do say in the opening paragraphs that we're in the process of developing climate change strategy, and we can make
But we
sure
already
that
have
that's
one
linked.
as a point. We actually already have a climate smart strategy. Is the point I'm making. That's not even mentioned here.
We can
We've
make
had
sure
one
that
for
that's
nearly 10
linked
years.
so that it will
Okay.
be there.
Thank you. Phil.
Thank you. I was just going to ask you in terms of how it might be achievable, that in referring to the agricultural emissions and getting comment on that, I'm just wondering, in fact, if there's some risk in including that part, so that, for example, if a lot of urban people are going to say, yes, we must include that, and then rural people are going to say, well, you set us up.
Yeah. Again, this will speak to making sure that we have, we're targeting the whole range. So I mentioned businesses, I should also have mentioned the agricultural sector. So we'll be going out to let them know that they have this consultation is happening, to make sure that they have the opportunity to have their say. But as with anything with a consultation, I mean, it's not representative. You'll get the information back again, and it will be your decision to make.
And part of the reason we took the approach we did is that if we don't choose to set our own targets, essentially the default target for the council district will be the government targets, which do separate out methane. And so that's one of the reasons we've raised that, because across the country it is like 50% is methane. In Christchurch it's only about 10.5%, I believe. And so it is quite a different context. But if we don't do anything, that will be what our district will be left with, I guess.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, so this has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this? Yanni.
Thank you. So, according to our own policy, to our own strategy, we're supposed to have a 20% reduction in the net greenhouse gas emissions from Christchurch by 2020 from the 2008 base year. But I can't see in this progress around that was supposed to be monitored. And so, I really welcome having this conversation with the community, but I would urge that we actually give people context about what we've done previously. Part of the problem, as I see it as a council, is we keep adopting all these strategies, but yet we don't monitor them enough, and we don't look at what we're actually trying to achieve, and we don't match it with financing and funding. And so we build up this expectation that there's all these things that we're going to do because they sound good, but when we go and look at what we're actually doing, we can't see it. So it would be really good, I think, really important to reference the work that was done previously. We do have a strategy around climate smart from 2010 to 2025. There has been a commitment to reduce our emissions, and I think it's a really important part of context for people when they're being asked what targets should we set, to actually know what targets we set previously and whether we're on track to meet those, whether we're not, and if not, why not, and what we need to do different. So, I welcome asking our community around these targets. This is ironically similar to the debate we had previously in 2010 when we did that initial climate smart strategy, because the government had different targets and we had a lot of discussion about that at the time. So we're doing that. They had different measurements and assumptions around things like sea level rise and forecasts, that we had a discussion about whether we should adopt or not, or be more precautionary. But I welcome having this conversation with our community. I do think they need more information around the context, particularly around what we've actually done previously as a city council. But let's get the document out there and let's start asking people.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you very much, and thank you to staff for all the work that's happened on this. I know that we have put you under a significant time pressure to get this through by September. It's really important to note that this is not our climate change strategy. It is a target setting, and it is only, I'd say, not quite first step, it's the second step. So we've done the sentiment survey, which was excellent and showed that the community were very clear about setting both ambitious targets, but ones that were achievable and realistic. And that's what this is based on. So it's really important that we make sure, like Yanni said, that this doesn't just sit on a shelf, that we have a target, that we measure it, and that we're accountable against these targets. That hasn't necessarily happened in the past. I am sure that it will this time. I am really looking forward to getting the community feedback on this, and then after this work is done, getting well underway with a climate change strategy, which is the work that will build on the climate smart strategy, that will look at how we reach that target, and we'll look at how we then adapt to our changing environment.
Thank you. Aaron.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing some of the results here. I just hope that it's wide enough reaching. I know we'll definitely hear from the usual suspects who talk to us every year and on every opportunity they can about climate change, but it's some of the others that we really need to hear from and their positions and getting them engaged from various industries. So that would be good. And the one, and it was mentioned before around farming and stuff, that farmers can change. A lot have and a lot more will. And let me tell you about hickory. Dropped the C. I dropped the C.
Thank you. Any further debate? So I'll put the motion. All those in favour